Hi, I'm Kelly Burkhurst from Designer to Full Stack, and today we're in Photoshop. And I'm answering the question, which is better when it comes to clipping or layer mask? And this was something that a YouTube viewer asked based on another video. And it made the connection with me of a January 2026 magazine cover that I saw from The Economist. And what stood out from a design perspective on this cover was the use of a one color image in the background using the Economist iconic red, and then a black and white image above, a layer above that one color. So, two of my most popular videos are how to make one color images and clipping and layer mask. So, I thought this was a good copycat example to play around with those two techniques and how we could do it. All right, so I am using two free files for our images, and they are from Pexels, Pexels, and the links are in the description below, so make sure you grab them so you can follow along. The first thing that I'm doing in Photoshop is creating a completely red layer. So there are many techniques for how to make a one color image, and I'm going to show you one here and look at the other videos for other techniques as well. All right, so how you make a one color image. In this case, I'm going to use the eyedropper tool and grab the Economist Red color, which puts it in my foreground, which is the top block. So now if I do new layer and I can name it, I recommend naming layers to stay organized, and it's also really helpful when you're exporting layers out as useful files. I've called it red, and then I can say with this layer selected, edit, fill, and I have a bunch of options. The default is foreground, and it's filled. There's also the paint bucket tool, and you can also change the paint bucket to be foreground or pattern, and you can click it once and it will fill. Two ways to get a red layer. Next, we are going to bring in the background photo. So I'm just going to drag it in from my desktop. I'm going to scale from the corner so that it doesn't stretch. Remember, we want to make sure that our width and height has the clicked chain link icon. That way it is scaling at the same percentage. And when I'm done, I can click return on my keyboard or the checkbox up at the top. Now I can go back to my move tool, the four arrows, move it around until I like it. All right, because I dragged this image in, it has a special icon here, which means it's a smart object, which means it's actually embedded. And so for right now, I am going to use that to my advantage. And there are multiple ways that you can turn an image into black and white. When it's a smart object, we can use image, black and white under adjustments. And this gives me a modal. I have multiple choices that are kind of pre-built in for turning it black and white. I'm just going to use default. So what you can see is that this is a smart filter that I can turn on and off. So it's a non-destructive way of making this image black and white. So now if I turn on, I have my red layer behind it. So I drag my layer below. And I'm going to change the blend mode of my image that's black and white. And I'm going to go with hard light. And you can see this blends it below with the red. And it's pretty similar to what we saw in The Economist, that it has darkness for people's dark shirts and their hair and their devices, and white for the bright lights. But you can actually choose the blend mode that you like the best. So maybe it's pen light, luminosity, overlay, it could be multiply. And remember, whatever you choose, in my case, I'm going to choose hard light. You can then adjust the opacity of it to be a little less strong if you choose. I have about 80%. All right, so that's one way you can turn an image black and white and then overlay it with the blend modes on a color layer of your choosing. So the next thing, if we look back to our copycat, so we have this full red image in the background, and then we have this square of a black and white image. So let's bring in our second image, which is a rectangle when it comes in. So we've got landscape mode, and we have multiple options. We could have opened this image individually, cropped it so that it was square, and then brought in the square version. So that's one way. But if we just bring in the original image and do it non-destructively, we have a couple options. So one is we can use our selection tool. If I hold down Shift when I'm using my rectangle tool, it will constrain the horizontal and vertical so that it makes a square. When I let go, when I have marching ants, whatever layer I'm on, I can now use the layer mask tool. So that clips it to the shape. On one layer, I have the image linked to my layer mask. White is letting me see it, black is hiding. All right, so that's one option. And now I can move this as a single unit where I want. And then again, just like we did with the former image, we can do adjustments, black and white, and turn it black and white. So that gives us pretty much the same type of design concept that we're seeing on this cover. Right. Pretty easy to do, right? Another way that we can do this, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my layer and delete out my layer mask. We can draw a square, Shift on my keyboard to keep it a square. I can move it wherever I want. Remember, you can do alignments. You go to this top ellipse and you say if you're going to align to your selection or to your canvas. If you're aligning to your canvas, now you get your vertical and horizontal so you can have it perfectly aligned where you want or wherever you would like. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it up some. So now I'm going to move the image on top of my square and I can use my right click, which is control click on my Mac, and say create clipping mask. All right, so what the clipping mask does is it is going to clip the picture to whatever is the layer below it. So it gets this little arrow and it's saying, I'm only visible where there's this square. What this allows me to do is now when I move my picture, it's basically kind of cropping it, right? Because it's only being shown, and you can see this is actually showing the red. So that shape that I have on the layer below is always visible unless this top one is clipped to it. Now I can still scale, return, and it's still being cropped. So you can see there's two different ways. This allows me to have two layers separate from each other. And when we did our layer mask, they were linked on the same layer. All right, so which one is better? Well, it depends which technique you want to use. One is not necessarily better than the other, and many times they accomplish the same thing. Now, here's an example where the layer mask is going to be better. So let's say that I'm going to go ahead and unclip. So I'm going to release the clipping mask and I'm going to turn off my square. With my picture selected, I'm going to choose Select Subject. And what this should do is put marching ants around this female. Now, with the marching ants, and with my picture selected, I can choose my layer mask. So what that does is show just the woman here. All right, so now I'm going to turn back. Well, actually what I'm going to do is duplicate this again. And this time I'm just going to delete. Okay, so now I have both of those. And I will bring up my rectangle, turn it on, and we're actually going to go ahead and use our clipping mask. All right, so now I have this square, and I'm going to bring the person back up here. Okay, so now I have just this one. I'm going to duplicate that red one more time. Bring it here. And this is where we're going to change I'll go to hard light. Okay, so now I have her. And what I can do is hold down my Option on my Mac and drag that mask to this red. So now only the red is showing in this female, and only the female is showing here. And now we need to turn this one on to create clipping mask. And so now we have the full black and white picture being clipped to the red square. And we have the female and the red being clipped to her unique mask. So what makes that really nice is now in this layer mask, I can paint white or black. And if I want to, so I go to my paintbrush. If I want to make it larger or smaller, I can use the brackets on my keyboard. And I want to make sure that I am in my mask. So I have that selected and I want to be white. And I'm going to paint in her leg. And I'm going to paint in this part. And here's her back. Okay. So you can see over here, I've actually added some more white. And now I'm going to Alt Option, drag that mask back to this red, say yes. And you can see I have now added. So the nice thing about using a layer mask is it's really easy to add and subtract non-destructively to bring more into your selection. So that might be a reason that you choose it over another one. All right, so if we recap, so we have layer mask where we can paint white and black to reveal or hide parts, and we can share the same layer mask that we make by using Option on our Macs and dragging. We can mask in shapes like rectangles, circles, or we can use clipping mask, which is one layer only being visible once it's selected and clipped with the layer below it to what is shown below. And we can see these same types of techniques being used in magazine covers that are being shipped out in 2026. All right, so happy designing. Let me know in the comments what brought you joy today. For me, it was my husband made me coffee. He does that every day, and I love it. All right. Also, if you have other questions or design techniques that you want to learn more about, let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to demo them for you. Happy designing.